Hello, everyone. Today we're going to talk about what taxation without representation means. However, first let's talk about why this phrase is important. Britain was left heavily in debt after winning the French and Indian War. Wars are extremely expensive, and so King George III and the British Parliament needed to find a solution to pay the money back that they spent on the French and Indian War. The solution was to tax the colonists. This would be the catalyst that would lead to the American Revolution and the Declaration of Independence. Okay, now let's talk about taxation without representation. First, we need to understand what taxation means, and then we need to understand what representation means. Taxation is money that is paid by the citizens to the government for public services. The government uses the tax money to pay for things like roads, schools, and the military. Here's an example. When you go to the store and buy a bag of chips that cost $1, you actually pay $1.06. The 6 cents is the tax that goes to the government. Now let's look at what representation means. Representation is when the people vote for politicians to serve in government to make laws and taxes that are best for them. The elected person's job is to represent the people and to make laws and taxes that are good for the people. Allowing a person to vote and to have a voice in government is a way to make sure the people are represented. Here's an example of what it looks like when a person is not represented. All states but Florida were allowed to vote in an election. Florida had no say who served in Congress. After the election, members of Congress began making laws that the people in Florida had to follow. This would not be fair because the people in Florida were not allowed to vote, so they weren't represented. So we've talked about how all countries tax its people, and the money is used for public services like roads, schools, and military. So why were the colonists upset about the taxes? During this time, the colonists were not allowed to participate in the British Parliament. They didn't have a voice in government. The colonists lived far away from Britain. In many ways, the colonies were only there to make Britain money. As a result, the colonists did not have a voice in government, they were not allowed to vote, and they were not allowed to run for office in the British Parliament. This meant that the colonists did not have a person who was representing their interests. So after the French and Indian War, Britain began taxing the colonists to pay back the war debt. The colonists were upset because they were not represented in the British Parliament. Their war cry was no taxation without representation. These taxation policies would lead to the colonies declaring independence, winning the American Revolution, and creating the United States of America. Thanks, everyone.